I grew up as a Presbyterian, lifelong Presbyterian in Memphis, Tennessee. They called me my name. They knew who I was. They welcomed me in community. I felt like I was a part of another family, a church family. That was really hard to have that always passed over me. And I never quite understood why, because I was baptized. Why couldn't I have that meal? I never asked the question. So later as an adult working in Alabama, to change the Book of Order to allow baptized children to take communion was very important to me. And I was there minding my own business on my Wednesday in Sheffield, and I get a call from McCormick saying, "We've got a position open, would you talk to us?" I said, "Whoa, wait a minute, I haven't finished my master's yet." I was still finishing the master's, and I said, "I don't have a doctorate." And that's okay, come talk to us. Teaching in a seminary on the south side of Chicago brought me into contact with the richness of the diversity that I had never experienced in my life. And so all that richness of culture, language, opened my eyes to a world that was much larger.
I really appreciated that she was always learning, so she would always pick up new information or new tools, and she would share that learning with us, and she was really attentive to the different contexts that each of the students came from.
She was famous for creating the space for learning. She would come to the classroom hours beforehand, and she would set the space up to make it a space for learning. What she taught me was that space teaches, that how we learn is informed and shaped by the space in which we are learning. And she showed that to us every single time our classes met together.
My first experience was getting into the classroom and thinking I was in the wrong place because it didn't look like a traditional classroom. I thought some worship was happening there. There was a table with fabric, candles, music, food, pictures, and I said, I'm in the wrong classroom. This is supposed to be seminary. But later I discovered that that's how Liv understood theological education. She thought it was a sacramental act, and that we were there in that space to be nourished together, to be supported in our growth, to build community as learners, and to have that experience that was really sacred in many ways.
She's an embodied faith person. Her faith is incarnational. All of her writings really do talk about a theology that is welcoming, that makes space for everyone. I mean, she would say, everyone who has thought about God and who wonders about God is thinking theologically.
I think there are two things that make for good teachers. One is someone who listens well to what people say, and someone who asks really good questions. And Liv does both of those. She knows the questions she's going to ask, and then she refines them as she listens to what the students are saying. It's really a mark of an excellent teacher.
She's the one that began to talk about moving us from Christian education, this idea of leading out, to formation, to think about what does it mean to help shape the whole person, not just the mind, but indeed the body and the heart and our emotions, everything around us. she's the one that began to help us understand that Christian education really is Christian formation for the whole person as disciples of Jesus Christ.
I would say that LEAP has introduced in our own learning process the idea that teaching is central to the work that we do as ministers, and that also we are part of the community that is called to teach and to express the grace of God through that kind of ministry where we embrace every generation in the church as an important part of the ministry that we do.
So those of us who are lucky enough to take a class with her, we learned content and techniques and ways to be very flexible and fluid in teaching situations to make sure that we met the learning goals. And people who did not get to take her in a class have experienced her as the ultimate educator, always curious, always asking good questions, always sharing insights and sharing food and being hospitable in such a way that it shows the rest of us what it's like to be a Christian.
And I have to say that, frankly, I've been worried for the last decade or two about who's going to carry forth education in the church. I'm no longer worried because I think that students who have been with LIB understand what education in the church is all about.
Her impact is so much more like a ripple on a pond. It just continues to move out in generations now. You know, she's probably teaching second generations of people whom she taught back then. So I don't know of anybody more deserving.